Shalom. We're here in this space at the Hebraica University in Mexico City, and we have a very special guest today. I'm speaking about Professor Kenneth Stein, former from Emory University. He's one of the most outstanding scholars in the Middle East. He is not just a scholar, which his books are the basis of a lot of research and a lot of other authors that quotes your work on the lands acquirement during the Mandate period and your books about the aftermath of the Yom Kippur War. But besides that, you are the founder of the Center for Israel Education, and also you have been an advisor of presidents of the United States. So we have here not just someone who reads and makes scholar work, but someone who have been working with the current policy. So Kenneth, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Daniel.
I would like to begin asking you, we are living in very complex times. So can you speak to us, what has changed after October the 7th with the criminal invasion of Hamas to Israel? What has happened? What has changed in terms of the Israeli society and the global Middle East?
First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me here at Hebraica again. I'm always glad to be here with friends and to help pursue Israel education and Israel learning. If you asked me that question in August of 1914, just as the World War I broke out, or if you had asked me on December 7th, 1941, when Pearl Harbor was attacked. Moments in time, in history, can be just events. You know, my birthday is an event. Your wedding day is an event, albeit very important to both of us. But then you have events like October 7th and December 7th and August of 1914 that we would call our benchmarks. They're benchmarks because they put a stake in the ground in terms of history's direction. Now, when benchmarks occur, the next question becomes, are they turning points? In other words, does society, does politics, do people who interact with the event, do they make the necessary changes, or do they go back to where they were the day before the Archduke was assassinated, or before October 7th, let's say October 6th. For Israel, this was the most, not only horrendous, but the most shocking event in its 75 years of history. We started off the year with Israel celebrating its 75th anniversary. Celebrations of Jews building a state, coming together from 80 different countries, creating a gross domestic product of $400 billion, having what was assumed to be the most vaunted defense, security services, a technological expertise that was world-class, sufficient enough for Arab states to come clamoring in the Abraham Accords, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, saying, we want your technology, we want your technology. So the answer to the question is, it's certainly a benchmark. Now we have to ask ourselves, is it a turning point? We do have already immediate reactions from people on the ground. We're now 4 months away from the event. Both you and I have recently visited Israel. Both you and I have impressions from people we talk to. And I think the conclusions we get to are pretty similar. But now what happens with those conclusions? So what are some of the conclusions? One, for example, would be the political system and the political echelon grossly failed to respond to the needs of the population in the weeks and the months thereafter. Second, in the immediate, the Israeli intelligence services and its preparedness grossly erred by enormous proportions. the last time Israelis can think about something like that would be October 6, 1973, when Egypt and Syria attacked Israel secretly on Yom Kippur. But the difference between Yom Kippur of 73 and Simchat Torah in October of 2023 was the Israeli army and the Israeli military intelligence had no idea. They were not prepared intelligence-wise. They were not prepared to react or to anticipate or to preemptively strike. Golda Meir, in 1973, she made a conscious choice. Her conscious choice was she had the intelligence. She had King Hussein, who had come to her 6 days earlier and said there will be a war. They had a secret agent in Cairo that said there would be a war. She told Moshe Dayan, she told the important people in Israel at the time, don't preempt, don't mobilize, and Israel paid the price. There was a conscious decision. This was not even a conscious decision. So Israelis today have lost faith initially in their defense establishment, but I think it's fair to say as the army prosecutes the war, it's beginning to develop, again, faith in it. Now, what else did we learn? We learned that the 40 weeks of civil society that was protesting Bibi Netanyahu's effort to overturn the judiciary in Israel, we learned that that civic society, that civic organization, that viral WhatsApp group, those Facebook pages, were turned almost on a dime into people helping one another. It was an extraordinary display of individual Israelis saying to themselves, you may have been attacked in the south, we may live at the center, but we and you are one. And I think people who don't know Israel don't understand that this is a society where everybody believes one is always out for the other. One will always protect the other. There is a cement, a devek, that glues the society together. And then you can see, after you go 3 and 4 months later, you have Jews from 8 or 9 or different places around the world who are picking oranges and picking citrus and making sandwiches for soldiers. There is this commitment to this peoplehood. Now, if in fact, over the last 30 years, Jews throughout the world have separated themselves out, they become politicized by their own environments, by their own local politics, by their own religiosity or their own secularism. Does this event become a glue that sticks world Jewry together or reconfigures it? That's a question, Daniel, I cannot answer yet. But you and I know that the ingredients for that result are certainly apparent.
I would like to know, following your interesting description and analysis of the issue, what is changing in the Middle East, outside Israel, after these attacks? How do you see the expectation of Hamas and the reaction of the Arab world? And also, what can you tell me about the political connections and reactions of the United States and other key players in the area?
And you want me to do this in 5 minutes? Okay. I think,
just the titles.
Okay, so I think there are 2 or 3 conflicts that are going on at the same time. One is the geopolitical conflict between Israel and Hamas, which is controlling Gaza. Hamas told the world 25 years ago its interest was in destroying Jews, delegitimizing the state, degrading the state as best as it could. And what we learned is that the Israelis now understand that if they're going to live next door to an enclave of Palestinians, they can't allow those Palestinians to be able to brutalize men, women, and children at will. Now, You can destroy a capability, but you can't destroy an idea. So if there are people who still live in Gaza in 2 months, 8 months, 3 years, that still want to see the destruction of the State of Israel, they will still want to see the destruction of the State of Israel. And I might say, some of the Palestinians who support Hamas, or some of the Arabs who support Hamas, they would like very much to see Israel disappear. I think what Israelis learned is you can be recognized by 6 Arab states, which are not accepted. There's a difference between recognition and acceptance. And I think Jews throughout the world, when they saw anti-Semitism rise up as a result of this, or they saw their own allies, wherever they were throughout the world, abandon them, then they said, where are our friends? Where did these people go? You mean just because I have a PhD, or because I run a hedge fund, or because I'm a teacher at a university, I'm accepted? So what you have is not only a reaction that's taking place locally, but you have a reaction amongst Jews elsewhere. I'm not saying it's happening globally. It's happening in very particular places. The second part of this event on October 7th, this is a geopolitical event of the region. Why did Joe Biden put up his hand and say immediately, this is evil? And then he sent 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. Because he understands that Israel represents liberal Western democracies where individual freedom matters, where the rights of the individual to self-determination is critical. And he understands that while Hamas is not a client of Iran, Hamas is perfectly willing to follow a philosophy that says that only Islamic ideology that's followed in the most radical fashion should be observed, which means Jews do not constitute a nation. They're not a people. They're only a religion. And Biden understands that there are countries in the Middle East like Yemen and Syria and Lebanon that have elements of Iranian insurgencies that are operative and influential in these countries. And Biden said, I'm putting down my line in the sand. And I'm saying, as well did Western Europe. When was Western Europe last so supportive of the State of Israel on any issue over the last 30 years? Barely was there a European country that said Israel shouldn't respond. Now people could say they responded too forcefully, they did it too brutally, they didn't do it with great care. All legitimate criticisms. But no one is saying Israel should not respond because they see Israel as the front line against this kind of toxic foreign policy that's trying to overtake parts of the Middle East. And the United States doesn't only have Israel as a friend. It has Egypt, it has Jordan, it has Saudi Arabia, it has the United Arab Emirates, it has Kuwait, it has Bahrain. In other words, the United States is saying, these are our friends too. And we're sending our boys, we're sending our troops to tell those countries, don't expand this, because if you do, you will have to deal with us. And we know that since October 7th, there have been skirmishes between the United States and Syria, in Iraq, and in Yemen. So that's the second big geopolitical issue. And the third is, what's going to happen to this region as it unfolds over the next 10 to 15 years? And the answer to that question is, as long as you have the geopolitics of the area and the geology of the area that are what they are today, they won't change. And what do I mean by that? I mean specifically, oil continues to generate dollars. Dollars generate influence. Influence for the good and influence for the bad. The international community has to put on their seatbelt, put their seat back in the upright position, and be prepared for continued confrontation with oil-producing countries that have nefarious interests and want to destroy and undermine democratic freedoms and democracies as you and I know them.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure, Daniel.